Hello, welcome to the Artist Collective radio show. I am your host, Shoshana Pearson. Today I have on a couple of artists. They are actually a couple. We have Danette Dufilho and John Dufilho, both artists in their own right, which is very exciting. Danette is the director and project room curator at the Conduit Gallery in Dallas, which she has done since 2000, the year 2000. She is also a current member of the Contemporary Art Dealers of Dallas, acting as committee chair for its 2019 and 2020 CAD Fund, CADD Fund Prize. She has also been a part of the Family Action Network for her daughter's school and religious education teacher at the First Unitarian Church of Dallas. John is a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist who has written for film and television. Right now, he primarily earns his income through music projects for other singer-songwriters who have him either engineer the projects, master mixing, or act as a multi-instrumentalist on their album as well. He is an all-around musician, and he not only produces work, but he's also a member of the bands Motorcade, the Deathray Davies, and Cliffs, and he plays drums for Salim Nuralla. He has also previously played with and toured extensively with Appleton Stereo and hopes to go out again very soon. John and Danette have been married since 2002, which is a long time by most of our standards now. They have one daughter together, June, a tween, which has its own exciting elements to it. And recently, June and Danette launched a bath bomb shop called Bomba Bath Bombs. Do I have that right? That's right. And where June serves as the CEO and Danette serves as COO, while John serves as the CFO. So it's a family business. Very much so. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'm so excited to hear about how you manage as an artistic couple, an artistic family, and how you make all of the things happen, all of the magic happen, and why this is a life you've chosen to live. Thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
So take me back to the beginning for each of you. Tell me about your individual artistic journeys, when you decided that artistry, this unconventional life, was the life preferred, the life you're choosing, and why did you choose this path instead of something more traditional or conventional?
Go ahead.
I'll go first.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My path, I didn't grow up with art. I didn't grow up in a family that really focused on art, but I was always encouraged to explore anything that was of interest. And I was one of those kids that in high school really didn't felt like where I could fit in, a place that was always open to me. Literally open was the art museum. So I spent a lot of time going there as a high school student in San Antonio. And, it was a place that you could go that was free. There were other people that were, kind of like you. And there were so many ideas that were floating around in this space that it was a place that I felt was like a safety net for like a kid that's maybe a little left of center or wasn't, quite fitting into many of the traditional molds of high school. Like I said, that kind of ends up being a traditional mold, right? It's kind of artistic kid. So I put all of that aside to study law. I thought I was going to go into law school. And while I was in college at UNT, I got a part-time job working for an artist. And then then the wheels fell off. I mean, it was kind of, everything I could do just to try to insert myself in some way into that life without being an artist.
Is that because you saw that you could earn a living or make it a life as an artist, or is that the first time you had really put that together? Or
I knew from my early experiences as a high school student, anyway. I don't know how early-ish. I'd known that there was a world of ideas that was possible in an artistic life. I knew that you could surround yourself with it and be in it, not actually make it, right? Like, so as a viewer of visual art. And once I started working for an artist, I really very much realized that you could live in that creative space and live in and around those ideas without necessarily being a maker. And that not only could you do that, but that was actually a really important role, a really important part of the process is being, this administrative artistic support system for creative people, in my case, visual artists. And I kind of took all of the skills that I had that I thought were going to take me down the path of, working in the government or working in law, and applied it to what I've been doing ever since.
Which I think is a really interesting point, because I think a lot of people think if I'm going to be an artist, I have to be in the spotlight, or I have to be the one with all the pressure to do all the work. And what you're presenting is that there's actually a lot of ways to be creative and in the artistic world, and not in that space necessarily. And so there's opportunity for more than just one way of doing that.
That's true. We call them like art adjacent jobs. I mean, there's an entire industry that's built not only around like the gallery and museum curation system, but art handlers and writers, critics, people who work in all kinds of support roles in and around the contemporary art world that don't actually have anything to do with making art. Although I will say, there's a lot of crossover. So there are a lot of artists who are art handlers, or artists who are art critics also. A lot of artists who are curators. Teachers, right. So it all kind of plays together. I kind of found my path, and it's worked for me. I really love it. And it's interesting that I was thinking about it, we were talking about this podcast and thinking about how that museum, that was open for me, that was an open, safe place for a young person who felt kind of alone, in a lot of ways, in terms of looking for like comfort in ideas, and just being in the space surrounded with them was really meaningful and impactful for me.
And how about you, John? When did you get started in the rock and roll world, the rock and roll life?
As early as I can remember. I would say that I never chose it. It definitely chose me I was probably, 6 or 7 when I became obsessed with drums and just wanted to play. And I had everything from our kitchen, just banging on things and driving my parents crazy until they actually bought me real drums, and then lessons, and then just obsessively about drums for the first part of my life. And then at some point I started joining bands, and I've never had any kind of hobbies. I've never had any kind of interests other than music. It's 100% what I've always done and been interested in. Anytime I'm not doing music, I'm either making music. I'm either, asleep or you guys. If she's like, well, what else do you want to do? I'm like, oh, well, yeah. What other kind of songs can I make? So I maybe sometime in my early 20s, I decided that drums weren't enough, and started picking up a guitar, learning chords, and immediately the purpose was I became really obsessed with the idea of songwriting and how is that done and what happens with that, and kind of just jumped in. As soon as I knew 4 chords, that was enough, and I already started writing songs. Just wrote 10 or 12 bad ones and just kind of hammered through and kept trying, and eventually kind of broke through, and I felt like I had some kind of control over it at some point, and then I just kept going, and now I'm 5 or 6 or 7 or 800 songs later, still trying, still looking at a blank page, thinking of what to come up with for the day.
Yeah, it's incredible how you're always doing something, and it's always impressive and amazing to me. Did your families ever give you pushback or tell you to be more practical or get real jobs? Or did you find that was anything that you encountered? Danette mentioned that her family was not artistic. John, was yours? Did either of your families try to put the kibosh on it?
Yes and no. I'd say no. They were supportive and they were cool, and unbelievably cool about me playing drums in the same house, daily. I mean, when I was learning, I mean, I would play for 4 or 5 hours every day, and I can't believe that, they put up with me. So in that way, 100%, there were a few rules of like, during these hours you can't play and that kind of thing. But yeah, they were unbelievably cool about it. And then later, I remember kind of having this, it would happen about every 4 or 5 years of my life, from the time I was 20 to the time, I mean, really for about 20 or 25 years. Every 5 years, my dad would kind of take me aside and say, okay, look, so this has all been real fun, but what's the real plan? Like, what's the backup? And every 5 years I say, nope, no backup, nope. And he'd kind of, he never liked that answer. And then I'd say, well, that's, the way it's going to go. And then somewhere,
still doing that?
So so I'm 52, around maybe 10 years ago, realistically, he finally just, instead of getting the talk, I was ready for it. And he was like, clearly this is just what you're going to do. So, good luck and have fun. I'm like, okay, thanks. So it finally sunk in. He saw me play on TV once, and I think that suddenly made him feel like I was legit. So I think that helped my case.
They're very supportive and
my parents have been wonderful. My whole family, actually.
His whole family.
They're insanely great about a weird choice. So
how about you, Danette?
Legitimately fans, I think.
Fortunately, I think they like what I do too, which is nice.
That's great. That's great.
How about you, Danette? I'm not sure that was the case at the start, but it's been great. Yeah.
For me, I kind of come from a particular kind of family. When I say they weren't artistic, I think they were, they were open. They have a very kind of open-minded family, which I've always appreciated, because I know a lot of people don't come from that kind of family dynamic. But I was kind of following in a path that kind of felt like what their path was. I legitimately could say that I honestly did. I loved, studying philosophy and law and government. And it's something that kind of, once the Trump era was kicking in and the Tea Party era, was something that I kind of, in the back of my head, I'm not going to say I regret any of my choices, but there were parts of me that thought, man, what kind of impact could I have made if I had stayed on that path? And that's kind of the path that I was on and expected to go on. But once I changed paths, they never second guessed me or doubted me. I didn't even know what I needed. And I think maybe it was that I didn't need much. I knew that I, had goals for myself that came from within, instead of kind of outwardly. I need to like drive a Porsche and have a second beach home. Like, if your goals are more modest, then you open yourself up for, I think, more fulfillment in your career. And I think both of us kind of, and we've talked about that ever since we've been together. Like, we want to live this way and living these creative fields, right. But there are, what do you call it? Like, you have to make concessions,
Well, it's funny for speaking to that, I thought that when I first kind of started writing songs that I was happy with and making records, to me, I don't really care about money. I don't really care about fame. I didn't really want any of those things. So I was like, success. I've arrived. It's great. And then, of course you have to have money. You don't have to have any fame or anything. That doesn't matter, but money kind of becomes a thing. So I guess there's concessions, and suddenly you start.
Well, we would always talk about them. And I think that was important, like all along the way, like we want to live this way, and this is fulfilling for us. So this is how, we're going to structure our lives so we can do it. But, luckily I feel like we followed, a smart enough path that we're able to kind of do both. it feels like, and now a lot of things for both of us are coming into fruition in terms of my role at the gallery, and my presence in the art scene, in the art community here in Dallas. And then with him really working on his own over the past year, and growing his own, business basically, and songwriting and releasing records.
So I'm curious about your relationship dynamic. One thing that I've been curious about you guys for a long time is that John will go on the road a long time, like he did with Apples and Stereo. So he'll be gone for weeks, months at a time. I'm not really sure how long you were gone at a time for that. But how do you balance? How do you make all of that work? I think doing all of the things while you have a child is difficult as it is, then kind of single parenting it while one person's on the road, but still doing it because you are dedicated to this life that you are choosing. And that's part of the concessions, I think. So tell me how you guys make that work.
Can I answer that? Or I'll start anyway. When he was at the peak of really traveling, mostly with Deathray and then with Apples and Stereo, it was before we had children. So there wasn't a lot. He was just gone, and happy for him, and it didn't really affect our day to day. It was, I growing up as an only child, being alone was okay. I missed him a lot, but I knew he was doing great things, and I'll let him kind of elaborate. But it timed out, and this is kind of one of the things that I really I just am in awe of him and how he's structured his life and made the choices he's made, because he, I think, made a conscious effort right around the time that our daughter was born, to start to shift into more of a studio centric part of his career than a being on the road part of his career. So there was a little bit of overlap in maybe like the first year where he went to Asia and he went to Europe several times right when June was born. And that's that's when we got the night nanny. Woo! That's how you do that.
That is electric.
We had a live-in nanny, and she was a college graduate, an artist.
For when I was out of town.
And that really helped a lot. But then he made that transition really just gracefully into, I'll let you take it from there.
No, that's it. I set out to try to make a living from switching from touring and just, playing on the road and that sort of thing to studio work, songwriting, that kind of thing. I honestly, it's nice to hear you say it was graceful, because in my mind, I was like, well, I'll try this for a year or two. I'll probably fail and I'll go get a regular job somewhere and keep making records on my own. And, here we are, how many years later?
10 years later.
And so I'm still doing studio things and getting hired to write songs. So thankfully, but it was very much, most of the traveling. There's been a few trips, but most of the heavy traveling was all right before June was born. So, and I wanted to be around when she was born. So I didn't really want to, luckily that desire went away for the most part of being on the road as soon as June came along, because I didn't want to be gone. So.
Well, and now that she's older, the older your kids get, the more you're opened up. And I think before COVID happened, at the end of 2019, he had really they had so many plans. Like, you were going to go out with the old 97s, and they had all of these shows lined up the entire year of 2020, different kind of travel things, and all that went away. All of that went away, and now she's even a year older. So it was temporary kind of I wouldn't even say a setback, but a kind of being at home, and then hopefully he'll be able to pick that up and do some more traveling and touring, playing out of the city. He's already started locally.
Tell me a little bit more about the pandemic's impact on your fields. So you, John, obviously were docked right here. You're right. You couldn't really leave or go tour or play live shows. So tell me how that affected you. And then you, Danette, like your art gallery did shows differently, that you changed the way that you opened up. So tell me a little bit about how the pandemic affected your art individually.
Good.
It was so abrupt. The entire art world really did shut down. And we have, I think, what's a very social kind of a practice. It's a lot like music. There are so many parallels, and that's one of them, is that it's a community and we all gather around, an artist's like show. And that happens on a rotating basis. And all of a sudden, not only were we not allowed, we weren't able to do that, we actually couldn't even open the gallery doors. So we very, very swiftly, we tried to work with our web developer, who's a fantastic guy, who's helped us for a number of years, in really beefing up the gallery website, so that all of the artists that had been ready, had planned shows that needed to happen, would be able to at least get installed in the gallery. Would go in, we'd hang the show, and then take a bunch of pictures and videos and then put that onto the website, so that we could try and recreate as best as possible the experience of having the exhibition. And I think a lot of galleries did that. I think a lot of art fairs did that. We were not unique in that. There was just this rush to transitioning to digital forms of viewing. And a lot of people, had gotten, got tired of that really quickly. But I think it also ended up doing a lot of good in terms of like the archival nature of the shows kind of being able to be viewed in perpetuity, not just while they're hanging, but then also open to a wider audience, a worldwide audience. You're putting as much documentation onto your website of an artist's work and their exhibition onto your website than anybody in the world can see it. And that's pretty cool. I think we ended up having, we as a business did well, and under the circumstances. I think a lot of the community, the collectors in different regions, and Dallas specifically, were able to realize that supporting the community and the network was important. So we had a lot of that kind of upper level and mid-level collectors still buying art, a lot of it sight unseen, which means they would just see like a JPEG or, even something on Instagram. So we feel very, very lucky. And now we're kind of slowly getting back into doing our exhibitions the way we normally have. But I would say that would be the biggest.
Do you think that any of the shifts that you made during the pandemic will stay after the pandemic, or do you have any plans to keep any of those things that you put in place?
I really hope so. To me, and that's just my nature, because I'm part of, like what you said, that support system and that background of helping artists. My job is to propel their careers, and part of that is having it live in all different kinds of ways for all different kinds of people to experience whenever they want. So yes, that real deep documentation and kind of online presence is something that I hope doesn't go away. But in terms of the day-to-day of an art gallery, most people who visit art galleries will know this, will have an opening reception, a big party for the opening of a new show, and maybe we'll see a couple of hundred people in a 2-hour window. We don't do that anymore. But on the day-to-day, the proposition of an art gallery as a space has always been a safe one, because we see maybe 2 or 3 people in a day come through a very large space with no walls. So I think what it was, by nature of what an art gallery is kind of lends itself to this kind of post-pandemic safe space for people to come and feel like they're not crowded into something, unlike live music.
Right.
Small
which is a good segue. John, tell me a little bit about your pandemic pivots that you have had to make in live music and otherwise.
Well, live there wasn't any, and I went since I think I was 18. That's definitely the longest I've gone without playing a show,
Wow.
which I didn't realize. Yeah, I didn't realize that I would miss it that much. But the main change was that most of my work was I was working for and out of an audio post house in the design district, and the post house didn't go under, but my work there did. So I built a studio in our backyard and transitioned from doing a lot of TV work to doing. I've been working on a lot of records for other bands and other singer-songwriters, and just helping other people make records, mixing things, that kind of thing. So my commute's nice. It's about 15, 20 steps now. Yeah, it's right back there. And so that's been good. Although the first few months, more than few months of that was scary because I just had no idea, whether it was going to work. So it was a big transition, and still kind of is. But my friend Salim Nurala was an enormous help. I kind of went to him first and said, can you point me in direction of any work? Do you need anything? I'd work occasionally, or actually more than that, 2 days or so a week. I'm going over to his studio as well and working on projects that he's given me. He's got, he's been doing this for a long time, so he has people that, come to him. So I've been mixing records with him, for him, and some of his projects. So he's been wonderful.
But a wholly new situation for you post-pandemic or during the pandemic than like a lot of people who maybe just were working their jobs and then their jobs would stay the same, but they just did it from their kitchen table. Like you literally built a new situation for yourself in terms of your career.
Yeah.
Outside of playing music.
So now live shows are coming back, and that's been awesome and weird too. It's sort of like you got used to just not being out, and I'm used to working by myself in a windowless room, just I'm used to doing that. I'm not used to seeing people anyway, so I'm sort of built for it. But the level, the amount of in the past year, it's funny, this happened just earlier. We were talking and I have no idea what day it's today.
You didn't.
And no idea barely know what month it is, just because every day is sort of in a wonderful way. It's sort of, they're all the same.
It doesn't matter what a weekend or a weekday.
So so I'm clueless about what day it is, just kind of what projects I'm working on and where they're going and how they're going. But yeah, so it's been a little bit freaky.
Don't you feel like as an artist, you kind of need to shift every once in a while to keep things interesting, whether it's a mental shift or how you do a process shift or something like that. And it seems like the pandemic for a lot of us has said, everybody now, shift now. And so everybody, I found that creativity has just sort of bloomed in places that weren't creative before. There's been like this surge in community and connection. There's been a lot of, I've learned who I don't want in my life, but there's also been a lot of, I've learned who I really like to be in my life and who I want to surround myself with. And I mean, for me and my family, we've, I think, expanded that in a lot of ways. Has that been something that you've witnessed as well, that you've seen in your life, your community kind of got closer knit, expanded at the same time? Have you seen any of that?
There was one particular Sunday where, you just have to get out of the house, but you can't go anywhere. This was maybe early summer, maybe just about a year ago. And we got in the car and we drove, and I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, but we drove through Deep Ellum and it was completely boarded up. And people had spray painted murals, like "We love you, Twilight," or, just all and like pictures and posters of the people that are a part of that community. And just seeing his face really showed me how important it was to him, because a lot of the times, in talking about like how we make it work, he's so active, not only playing in bands around town, but also seeing bands. So he was literally in Deep Ellum or somewhere seeing live music or playing live music every weekend before the pandemic, or every week, at least once a week, sometimes twice. And to have that go away, like to see that, you know, driving through Deep Ellum and seeing your you know, your space completely, boarded up. I saw how much it affected you. So I think that hopefully deepened that for you. I don't know. I answered for him. For me, and you can answer. Yeah. For me, exactly like you said. My daughter and I started this really, really fun bath bomb business last summer, and it's brought us so close to the people in our neighborhood because we have this kind of creative, this really wonderful little neighborhood that has a bunch of makers that really kind of figured out how to do like impromptu pop-up markets and like front yard sales and community gatherings where we're able to sell our bath bombs. And we've met so many great people and learned so much about all of the kinds of talents that they have. Like a woman across the street from us is a beekeeper, and she makes this really wonderful like bath products and lotions with the bee, you know, the bees, whatever nectar, miracle nectar, things like that. So yeah, that's interesting to like build this kind of, and we do a lot of like trading and bartering with people, and you know, we'll be selling bath bombs at a block party in, you know, Little Forest Hills next weekend, and meet even more people and see the things that they do. Yeah, that's important.
I find that really interesting because this aesthetic life that you two have chosen as a couple, as individuals, and then as a couple now affects a third generation or a second generation. It affects your daughter and beyond. So tell me some of the lessons that you're hoping to impart to June about living the aesthetic life or being creative or having a limitless opportunity as far as what she can do with her life. What are you hoping to communicate to her through art and music and entrepreneurship?
Well, the funny thing is that she doesn't know any different. I mean, to have a mom that runs a gallery and a dad that, you know, is constantly making noise in microphones, that's just sort of what she's grown up and what she's used to. So, I mean, ultimately what I hope for her is that it's not so much, I mean, yeah, she's already really creative and really wonderful. But what I hope is that kind of what you were getting at about the pandemic, and kind of part of what I'd say my answer would have been from before, is that I was really surprised how much I missed the guys in my bands, Cliff's, the Deathray Davies. When we'd get together, suddenly it was just like we didn't take it for granted anymore, and it's really shone through when we rehearse. And so I want that for June is if anything, you know, hopefully she'll like the fact that we've, you know, there's things we have creative things to show for our work. There's, you know, things that we can point to, but more importantly, kind of all of the relationships with our friends and work people and whatever, how strong those things are and how much they mean to us. Hopefully that translates more than any of it. And that's the kind of the thing that, you know, the importance of that rings through more than anything is my hope.
That she can be, for me, I hope that she's learning. I think it's important to be both a consumer and a producer of culture, but that she can learn that she can be an active part of it. An active part means making your, not just artistic community, but your entire community, wherever you are. If you're in Dallas, you can be a part of shaping that. And that kind of proactive, you know, kind of didactic message where she's literally somebody that can shape it and, you know, make it better. That would be something, because I think he and I are both out there doing that on a day-to-day. And now with our, you know, now with Bomba, we're doing that in our ways as well, having fun. And they're chatting. She'd like to come in. She'd like to come in and say hello. I think she's circling.
Come on in.
Pardon me. Reach over here.
I mean,
there's Junie.
Arguably your greatest creation right here.
Yeah. Right?
No argument.
Miss
Yes.
Miss
Without
John
a doubt.
Dufilho.
Without a doubt.
And it's for me, I feel like my kids are the thing that just kind of like came out the best, and I had to like, I mean, I worked the hardest, but like they just came out like they just came out so great.
Yeah.
So much other art, like you work on it and you're like, this is crap, and you have to tear it down and start over. But with kids, they're just amazing. So thanks.
I love it. Yeah, I love it. This whole like all of our kids, we're all in the same friend group, and these kids have all grown up with this array of creative and wacky parents, and that's their normal. I love it.
Right. I do too. I love that. Right.
Like this the whole time.
I do feel a little nervous for any of our kids who just want to like be lawyers or like just like regular traditional.
I want to be a doctor when I grow up.
Oh well, okay. We'll see. You have the options, and maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
We're not can't box you into any one particular thing. So, Danette, tell me a little bit about what's going on with the Conduit. What you guys are working on, when you're showing.
We kind of follow an academic calendar at the gallery with our exhibitions. So now that this is the beginning of June, we are really like kind of slowing down for the summer months, and we usually spend the summer months planning the next year and a half, which is kind of what we've started to do. But we do have 3 wonderful shows that are up. Particularly a Texas artist, Jules Buck-Jones, who lives in Wimberley and makes nature-based works on paper and sculptures with wood. And there's I think a very kind of real tradition of Texas artists who kind of communicate through their paintings the natural world. Jerry Bywaters, the Dallas Nine, Otis Dozier. I mean, he's going back 100 years. And then more recently, artists like David Bates and Billy Hassel. And so Jules, who's just turned 40, so kind of like that kind of younger, really super fresh take on this lineage of Texas artists that work with, kind of not just the landscape, but the flora and fauna and the wildness of Texas. So that's up until July 3rd.
Okay, great. John, what you got going on? What's coming up? You doing live shows, you said?
Some live shows, yeah. Both Cliffs and the Deathray Davies are playing. Working on 2 new records, one for each of those bands. Halfway through a Cliffs record and almost done with a new Deathray, even though we just released one a month ago. But so, yeah, a lot of that. I'm working on... in the studio, I'm working on my studio, I'm working on a record for a guy named Nicholas Altabelli, who's really super talented. And that record's almost done. A guy named Jason Fincher, also, he was in a band called Bockenville. So doing a record with him. Just great songwriter. What else? Jeff Neely is a guy I just started working on some songs for, and anyway, just lots of records.
What's your next live show, or who is it? Is it Deathray, Cliffs?
Cliffs are playing a party next weekend, and then
I'm always surprised.
And then we have a double wide show in July with Ottoman Turks, and then the Deathray Davies have an August show at the Kessler with Pleasant Grove. And we're going to play the night before that in San Antonio, a place called the Paper Tiger. So, yeah, show's coming back up.
It's not even a live show, it's a tour.
It's a tour.
That's so exciting.
It's like, yeah.
So, yeah, some actual out into the world events.
That's so exciting. Well, I think that's it for me for questions for you guys today. I'm so glad to sit down and talk with you about how you make it work as a couple, as a team, as parents, as artists, musicians, all of the things. Thank you so much for sitting down and sharing your heart and mind and stories with us. And we look forward to the live shows and to the shows at the Conduit. And anything else that you want to share with the world about what you do and how you do it before I totally sign off here?
She's the bomb.
Oh, thank you.
That's all. She's
Yeah. I don't know. We're having a blast, and thank you for having us on. You really kind of reinforce that what we do is meaningful, you know, to other people, to the outside world. And that's not why we do it, but it does mean a lot. Thank you so much for having us on.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on, and we look forward to whatever comes next.
We'll party this summer.
Yeah.
Let's get back to it.
Woo!
Thanks.
And thank you all for joining us today on the Artist Collective radio show. Be sure to like, subscribe, and join us. We've got more to come. We've got more people in the works. So please stay tuned and see what we got coming up next. Thank you so much.
Bye.